Okay, well, hello everybody, and really glad that you are in group tonight. I really believe that discipleship happens best in circles, even better than in rows, and so thanks for being in group. I trust that you're having a great experience. Wish I could be there live, but hey, this is a great way to join you and to just share a little bit and talk a little bit about this wonderful study we've been looking at in Ecclesiastes called Chasing the Wind. We've been looking for ways that Solomon, the king, was trying to find real meaning and fulfillment in life. And we followed him now through an endless search of things and attitudes, and just looking for something to find some fulfillment in a depressed life. And yet every time he searches for something, or every time he tries something, he just comes up empty. And he's getting more and more discouraged, it seems, by the moment. And so now we come to a point in time where once again, Solomon has turned his attention to searching. This time, he's searching for fulfillment in the pursuit of money. Now, if there's anything that would be relevant for us today, certainly that's it. All of us at one time or another have pursued money, or an accumulation of money, or an amount of money, seeking to find fulfillment or meaning or purpose, or at least the purchase of something that might bring fulfillment. We use money, don't we, to look for things like security, things like possessions that might bring us joy or happiness, or maybe even an experience that we might have that we can find. And so this is extremely, extremely relevant for us today. Too many today are searching for fulfillment in the accumulation of money. Now, we're always uncomfortable talking about money, you know, in the church. It seems that when we do, everybody always says, oh, that's all you talk about is money. It's not true. However, what is true is the Bible has a lot to say about money. And anytime God has something to say about money, it's really worth us listening to. So today, when we look at Ecclesiastes chapter 5, the end of the chapter, we see Solomon talking about money, and God using this discussion or this writing, this memoir from Solomon's journal to teach us about money. After all, Solomon started his journal by calling himself Koheleth in Hebrew, which means the teacher or the preacher. So today he's going to teach us a little bit about this thirst for money that seems to drive so many people in the Western world today. So, Koheleth in Hebrew can mean teacher, but it also can be translated preacher. It's interesting that it comes that way because this segment of Solomon's journal is almost like a sermon. In fact, the way he builds his argument, his case, is very much the way we build a message today. He offers in the text, a good way to look at it, a good way to break down the text as you study tonight, is this way. First, he offers an observation, a general observation and principle that he gives us about money. It doesn't summarize everything about money, but just one statement, one observation about money as it relates to meaning, fulfillment, purpose in life. After the observation, he makes an explanation. He explains his thinking. Instead of just throwing something out as a principle, he begins to explain why it's so. And then he concludes the section with an application. That is, taking the observation and the explanation and saying, okay, here's how you can apply this and make it very pragmatic in your everyday life. So let me just break that down for you as we broke it down Sunday. And you can chase this and move it, unpack it even more in your circle tonight as you talk about this search that's so relevant for all of us. First of all, let's note the observation. The observation is clear to us. It's found in verse number 10. He says, the one who loves silver is never satisfied with silver, and whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. The observation is simple. Money doesn't satisfy. Money is not going to bring fulfillment. It's not going to bring meaning. It's not going to bring purpose in life. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. You've been thinking, because we've all been coached to believe this. Well, if I just had enough, it would be there. But the truth is, we don't ever have enough. That's his observation. It doesn't satisfy. Remember his search. He said, pleasure doesn't satisfy. He said, things, possessions, that hasn't satisfied. He says, life itself in general doesn't satisfy. Now he's saying money is not going to satisfy us either. Now, let's move to his explanation and notice the case that he builds for this. First of all, his first reason for saying that money doesn't satisfy is that money has no satisfying cap. He says in verse 10, whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. It's futile, it's empty, it's the inside of a soap bubble. And you know what? We found that to be true, haven't we? There's no cap to satisfaction. The richest man in the world is telling us there's never enough. You always want, always need more. There's never a satisfying point. I believe it was Henry Ford who said, when asked how much money is enough, Ford said, a little more than you have right now. So we're never satisfied. There's no cap. The second thing comes in verses 11 and 12. Money has so many ways of disappearing. There's all kinds of ways to disappear. Read those two verses and look through them and see just a couple of hints of how money disappears. He suggests, doesn't he, that when we have a lot of money, we have a lot of friends. And those friends tend to appear and are glad to take some of that money off of your hand, or at least glad to help you spend some of it. In fact, he talks about the worker who can't sleep because he always has a need for more. Money just has a way of slipping through our hands, though it can't satisfy. He assures us that money has a lot of ways of disappearing. Third, verses 13 and 14, money can be lost suddenly. He talks about a man, the tragedy of a man who leaves nothing for his children because of a sudden loss, a bad business deal. We've all had those. Because that happens, money can't satisfy. There's always that risk of losing. And even people who've accumulated much money don't sleep at night worrying about the fact that it could be all lost in one slide of the market. It could be all lost in one bad deal. The fourth thing he mentions, verses 15 through 17, is that money and the things it provide is temporal. And because of that, it can never satisfy. In fact, he says, we came into this world with nothing, and we leave this world with nothing. We can't take anything with us. It's only temporal. So a detailed explanation and looking at those verses very carefully and talking through those verses help us to understand why Solomon makes the observation, you know what? Money never satisfies. Then he finishes off this section by talking about something that is worth pursuing. He says, if you're going to pursue money, understand that it's going to be a continual pursuit that will never reach an end. But then he says, if you want something to pursue, consider this. Verses 18, 19, 20, he mentions three things. I'll mention them briefly, and then you discuss them. First of all, he says in verse 18, pursue enjoyment of your life. He says, here's what I've seen to be good. It is appropriate to eat, drink, and experience good in all the labor one does under the sun during the few days of his life God has given him, because that is his reward. In other words, he says, enjoy the life that God's given you. Every day God gives us new breath. Every day that he gives us a heartbeat. Every day that he gives us to live, we ought to enjoy that life to the fullest. We ought to enjoy that being to the fullest with everything that God has placed around us. Second, he talks about this. If you want to pursue something, pursue fulfillment in your work. Verse 19. Furthermore, everyone to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also allowed him to enjoy them, take his reward, and rejoice in his labor. This is a gift from God. Now, I know that's contrary to our thinking. I know we hate to rise on Monday because we got to go to work, and we thank God when it's Friday because we're off of work. But you know what? There's something wrong with that. If we're using our work only for the purpose of accumulating money, that's the way we look at it. But why not search for fulfillment in the work that you do? I have a lot more to say about that, but let me go to the third thing. He says, if you want to pursue something, pursue contentment in your heart. Verse 20, for he does not often consider the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. You want to pursue something. Pursue joy. Joy is something that money can't buy. But contentment and joy in our heart is what makes life worth living. What gives us real meaning, real happiness, and real fulfillment in our life. So the takeaway this week is simple, and I'll leave it with you to discuss. Real meaning in life cannot be bought, but it can be found. It can't be bought. No matter how much money you have, you can't afford it. I don't know how much money you have or don't have, but really that's not the point. Money can't buy that happiness, but it can be found when you learn to enjoy the life God's given you, find fulfillment in the work that God's given you to do, and find contentment in your heart. What a blessing. Well, be blessed as you talk about this, and we'll see you next time.